Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to another episode of the Decentering Men series. This is probably going to be at least a 20-part series because I have so much to talk about on this topic. And I feel like there are so many bits and pieces that have not been talked about. One of those is has anyone noticed how a lot of married women are actually very lonely, and even married women with children as well? Has anyone noticed this? A lot of people like to give the talking point of if you don't hurry up and get married, you're going to die alone with cats. But generally speaking, single child free women tend to be less lonely because they have more time to go out and make friends, and then they can go with their friends to bars and go on girls trips and have more freedom than a woman who has a husband kind of telling her what to do or influencing her decisions, and then children who she can't really leave as long unless she has a babysitter. So, you guys heard me talk in other episodes about how I personally do not believe that men are as emotionally intelligent and as emotionally available as how women are, because men are not socialized to care about emotions as much. Men are not socialized by the media and society and by their parents and by their fathers. They're not socialized as much to think about emotions. And so, because of that, I do feel like in a lot of marriages, generally speaking, the woman's emotional needs are still being unmet. Just because you're married doesn't mean that suddenly you guys are going to have all this quality time together and it's just going to be so romantic and you're going to go on these dates. No, there are plenty of articles that talk about how a lot of men, they start off pursuing you more in the beginning. That's when they're taking you on the most dates and kind of giving you the flowers and doing what they can to win you over. But once they've already won you over and you already live with them, you're paying 50% of his bills and busting it wide open and cleaning his dishes and birthing his children. Once you're doing all of that, then suddenly the effort level from men on average tends to go down. Most men spend on average only around $150 per month on dating. We talked about that in a previous episode of this series. So if you think that getting married to a man suddenly means that he's going to be continuously taking you on a date once a week for the rest of his life, you're telling me he's going to take you on 52 dates per year? And let's say you're married for 50 years. You're telling me that your husband is going to take you on over 2,600 dates on average? The average husband does not do that. He's not taking his wife on a date once a week. And in my opinion, it's no longer a date, because if you're paying 50-50, that's really just two roommates paying for a meal. I pay for my meal, you pay for your meal. So to me, it doesn't make logical sense to go from he is whining and dining me to suddenly now we're married and I'm paying for my own meals. And I'm busting it wide open, and I'm cleaning up after him, and I'm cleaning up after the children and changing their diapers. But I personally do believe that most married women are lonely because in order to even get married and sustain a healthy or at least somewhat normal marriage, you do have to center that man. At least to some extent, you do. You have to, because you have to obviously move in together if you're getting married. So that means that you're either moving into where he lives. So guess what? He's the one who did those decorations. He's the one who gets to decide what types of dishes you're using. He's the one who did the color scheme. So you are having to be at least somewhat male-centered, or maybe you have to move to whatever city his job is in. Maybe you have to, be home at a certain time because he has a higher level of expectations on you as a wife versus if you're just some girl he met from a dating app. So I do believe that there is an aspect of centering one another when you are getting married. And to say that you don't center each other when you're married, well, first of all, that sounds like an abusive relationship. Why would I purposely want to be with someone who neglects me? But this is what a lot of women are actually doing, though. They will get married to a guy and they will center him, but he's not centering her. He's still coming home after work and just playing video games and ignoring her. He's still coming home after work and just, jacking off to porn and going to bed. He is still not answering her text messages, not really prioritizing her emotionally. So I do believe that a lot of married women actually are lonely. And I think that another part of this is because as women, a lot of us do tend to lose our identities when it comes to being a wife and being a mother. A lot of people in society view wives and mothers differently than how they view a single child free woman. It kind of reminds me of that toxic guy, Keke Palmer's baby daddy, how he was like, you shouldn't dress like that. You're a mom. Well, unfortunately, Darius, he's not the only type of guy that I've heard make comments like that. I've heard some of my own family members say stuff like that. Like, oh, you can't drop your kids off and like have a night out with the girls because that is like ratchet and that's bad and like you shouldn't do that. So I do feel like a lot of moms are guilted into kind of being this slave and never having time for themselves. And I've seen the same thing happen with wives. So, for example, a few of my friends, once they got married, they no longer spent as much time with us. Like they spent more time. They'd be like, oh, I have to be home at a certain time because I want to cook for my husband. And they didn't necessarily say it like, oh, my husband says I have to. No, that's just a woman trying to be loving. That's her way of like showing love to the guy. I've noticed that generally speaking, women are socialized to be more, I guess, nurturing. And, that's kind of our way of showing love a lot of times is by doing things like cooking, all of these different acts of service, cleaning, and stuff like that for the guy. But a lot of men do not value that. Men value beauty, they value being sexy. A lot of men will literally catch feelings for you because you're beautiful, because they're just attracted to you. So now he's all in his feelings. He's over here nervous. His heart is pounding. He's feeling anxious, all because you have a big booty and you put on some lashes today. So there is a huge difference between what the average man values and what the average woman values. And this is why I believe that a lot of married women are actually lonely. I believe a lot of them are emotionally neglected or emotionally unfulfilled. And also, it is pretty normal when people get married. It's kind of normal for the woman to isolate herself more, especially let's say they just had a newborn baby or something. Yeah, a lot of those women, their whole lives start to revolve around their wifely duties and their motherhood duties. So these women, they're not out here living their best lives as much as they used to. Unless, of course, if that is your definition of living your best life is, being a wife and being a mother and doing domestic duties and, cleaning up and all that, then that's fine. If you enjoy spending your evenings sweeping with brooms and, wearing an apron and baking cookies and stuff, that's great. I'm not sure why you would be watching a Decentering Men series. You may want to rethink the relationship you're in, just saying. But I do believe that a lot of women tend to go through almost this disappointment once they get married and have kids because they kind of have a mindset of, wait, this is it? And that is because we have been taught from the time we were little girls that all we should aspire to is being a wife and mother, and that is the pinnacle of happiness. And so once you pass that wedding day, once you pass your honeymoon, and you most likely argued with your husband on your honeymoon, or at least a lot of couples do, or maybe the sex wasn't how you expected it to be, or maybe your new husband, he's not acting any different than he did when he was your boyfriend, because that's another huge misconception. A lot of women believe that if he puts a ring on it, or if you guys get married and move in together and have kids, that will change him and that he will somehow mature into this responsible, loving, and caring man. So I think that is another thing that leads to a lot of married women feeling very isolated and feeling very lonely in their marriages. And this is why we see women who are married trying to come into the red pill space and trying to kind of shame women who are single. It's because that woman is still seeking emotional validation, particularly from men. And because she's not receiving it in her marriage, she will look to the internet to receive that validation. And she will do it even under the guise of, oh, I'm married. So like I'm wise. That's another misconception, by the way. Being married doesn't mean that you're automatically just this wise, mature woman and, you're somehow higher value than the women who are sex workers and baby mamas and single women. You are higher value than them because you are someone's wife. And a lot of people seem to forget that before you get married, you were once single. So it's not like you've just never been single in your life and you were born married. So I never understood this concept of if you're married, you're somehow higher value, and if you're single, you are somehow lower value and no one wants you. Oh, and by the way, another thing that I forgot to mention, most wives pay bills. A lot of marriages are 50-50 marriages, or even if they're not 50-50, that woman is still paying some of the bills on average. You guys saw me talk about actual numbers and statistics on one of the recent episodes. 90% of men in the US make less than $167,000. So depending on how many kids you have, or if you want a house or whatever, more than likely, whoever you end up marrying, he's not going to be in the top 10% income bracket. There's a 90% chance that he is going to be an average Joe. He's going to be middle class. And so guess what? You're going to be paying some of those bills. Or if let's say you want to have like this nice $250,000 house, guess what? You're going 50-50 on that down payment. So I think that that's another reason why a lot of married women are just kind of living in a tolerable level of permanent unhappiness. I've seen a lot of people talking about that concept. I actually believe that it is impossible to maintain a marriage for dozens of years unless you yourself accept a tolerable level of permanent unhappiness. You know why? Because no man is perfect, no relationship is perfect. You're going to be arguing. And statistically speaking, with the way our economy is and with the way the average man is, don't even get me started on the average black man. So, or man of color. Yeah, most likely you're going to be paying some of those bills. So you're busting it wide open. You're giving him a free womb. You are more than likely not as emotionally fulfilled as you thought you would be, and you're giving him a discount on bills. All while that stuff is happening. You're giving him a 30% discount on bills. You're giving him a 50% discount on bills, and you're cooking 100% of the meals. Oh, he's got it made. And I also believe that another reason why a lot of people can be married but still lonely is because just going through life, like the pressures of the 9 to 5, and you have to pay part of his bills, and then you have to come home and clean and cook, then you have to raise the kids. I do believe that having to juggle all of those things can cause you to not be able to spend as much quality time with your partner. Another thing that I've noticed in a lot of marriages is that sometimes people can feel lonely even when they are together. So I think that this comes from the mental disconnect of, for example, why did you marry that person? Sometimes people marry for money. They marry because the person's attractive. Don't even get me started. Actually, I think I need to do an episode on the men who marry women that the woman's not his dream girl, but she likes the way that, or he likes the way that she serves him. Yeah, that's a whole other talking point. But I do think that with some married couples, there's almost like this mental disconnect because he's working, he has his career going for him. And hopefully, if you married a guy who has a high paying career or a high paying job, he is going to have to do overtime. Or if he has like a business of his own or whatever, he's going to be spending probably more than 40 hours a week doing his business. So yes, you are going to be at home by yourself. And guess what? That's the life you set up for yourself. So yeah, you're going to be at home cooking and cleaning and, raising the kids while he is out kind of building his career. And I still believe that in a lot of cases, being a stay-at-home mom is still kind of being a Barbara the Builder in a way, because if he had those kids and was a single dad, do you think it would be as easy for him to work all those overtime hours and, start that business on the side? No, it wouldn't be. So this is why I still personally feel like even if you're a stay-at-home mom or a housewife, you still are helping him build. I'm not trying to shame women for their decisions. I think that we have all had our pick-me phases or our phases where we have centered men. But I do believe that, if you're helping him build, and especially if you're not building for yourself, whatever your passions are and stuff, that's being a Barbara the Builder in my opinion. Because a lot of married women, they actually spend more time trying to emotionally connect with their husbands, reading all of these relationship books on how to be a good wife, reading all these books on how to overcome their own insecurities, how to emotionally heal themselves, to make themselves more attractive to their husbands, how to keep the male gaze, like how to keep their husband's eyes on them. Because one of the biggest lies we've been told as women is that if you marry him, this means he will only have eyes for you. He will only want to fuck you. He will only be lusting after you. You are the star and the apple of his eye. There's no such thing. According to them, by the way, and according to stats and according to studies on porn and things like that, there's no such thing as you are the apple of his eye for the most part. Because no, most guys, they don't have eyes only for you. So you're not the apple of his eye. You're the apple of his eye while you're around. And as soon as you're not around, you technically don't know what he's doing. You don't know what he's liking on Instagram. You don't know what he's doing on his phone. You don't know what he's, if he's calling phone sex lines at night or if he's like trying to go in these chat rooms and all that stuff. You have no idea. You don't know if he has a work bae. You don't know if he has a work wife or if he has like, some waitress that he likes to talk to at the coffee shop all the time. So I do believe that when you are married with children, and especially if you have kind of centered a man in your life that much to where he's the breadwinner, he's the one providing your whole lifestyle, you moved into his house, you are raising his kids, or like at least he kind of views it that way, or he has this whole role set out for you. if that's not your life dream, then yes, I can see how you may feel very isolated because especially if you have friends that are like not married and they have the freedom to like they can wear whatever they want. They don't have to worry about disrespecting their husbands or whatever. They can wear whatever they want. They can go wherever they want. They stay out as late as they want. They don't have kids that are going to be like, Mom, where were you? So they don't have that mom guilt. Another thing that people don't take into account is that when you are married or in a long term relationship where you're sharing finances with this man, you're sharing a living space with this man, you are basically sharing your life with this man. So he is the center of your life, or he's pretty damn near close. Any stressful events and challenges that you face as a couple, that can create a rift in the relationship. It can cause you to feel lonely. Like, let's say a family member dies. Let's say, you guys get an expensive medical bill or something. Those things are stressful. And it can feel more stressful if it exposes a weakness in your marriage. For example, let's say one of the kids gets sick. You want to call the emergency room, but he doesn't want to pay for the child to go to the emergency room. That's going to cause a really big argument. That can cause you to be stressed out. Those are stresses that a single child-free woman never has to even think about. I don't have to think about arguing back and forth with some guy over, him being able to pay for Johnny because Johnny broke his arm, or I have to pay Johnny's medical bill because the husband, he says, well, I'm already paying the mortgage. All of those snide remarks that men like to give when they are resentful towards their wives. Because a lot of people, they don't talk about how most men are not generous. This is one of the biggest flaws that I see in kind of the hypergamy talking points. I'm not saying that I don't support hypergamy because I will never promote dusty relationships on here. I will never promote 50-50 relationships on here ever. But a lot of women don't seem to realize that most men are not generous by nature. They're not just being generous to you out of the kindness of their heart. They're giving you money because they want something in exchange. They want sex in exchange. They want you to shut up and do what they say. They want you to kind of play the background side character role in their life. So wherever their job takes them, that's where you need to go. Wherever he wants to live, that's where you need to live. Whatever he wants you to wear in the bedroom, that's what you need to wear. However he likes your hair, that's how you need to wear it. So this whole concept of, oh no, just find a guy who's like really rich and really generous and like, he's a high value man and he's emotionally available and he's a unicorn. So if you want to spend the next 80 years of your life searching for a needle in a haystack, that's fine. But I do think that for a lot of married women, they think that they found the needle in the haystack. They will have this guy, they'll fall in love with him, and then they will start gradually centering him more and more and more. And, maybe she used to like doing knitting before. She kind of stops knitting because, Scott is not really into knitting. Scott likes golfing. So now she starts golfing when that's not her passion. Oh, Scott also likes to go horseback riding. And so she starts going horseback riding, even though that's not her passion. She wants to go and create artwork and do painting. But Scott thinks that that's kind of lame. He'd rather go to a football game. So that now she's going to football games because Scott wants to go to a football game. And Scott has XYZ amount of money. Okay, but is that not being male-centered? Because you're doing all of these things so that Scott will pick you. You're doing all of these things in hopes that Scott will begin centering you. But since when does centering a man mean that that man will center you? Most men are not reciprocal. Most men do not keep the same energy. Most men do not perform generous acts out of the kindness of their heart. They give generous tips because they want to fuck the waitress. They go and get that CEO job not so they can help underprivileged women, but so they can sleep with women who are more underprivileged than them. They build up all of this wealth so that they can attract a poorer woman to latch on to him. And then he's like, yes, I got one latched on to me. All right, cool. So now she can help me build. She can basically be my employee. She can be my therapist, my emotional support. She can be my sex worker, and she can be a mother to my kids. And my kids get to inherit her pretty brown eyes and her pretty tan skin tone and her curly hair. Great. So I think that this harsh realization that a lot of women come to once they're in the marriage, I do think that it can cause them to feel more isolated. And also, a lot of people don't talk about porn within marriages. Most of the time, people who are married, actually, if you ask any sex worker, I don't know if you guys watching know any sex workers in real life. I mean, I have friends who are in the sex work industry. If you follow my Patreon, you guys know about this. But I've heard a lot of sex workers say that the majority of their work is from married men. So imagine centering this guy and doing all this stuff, and then he still wants to go find Big Booty Judy and spend his money or spend you guys' money on her. And some of you guys will be like, oh, but if he goes on Pornhub, like that's free. Okay, but he's still giving undivided attention to Candy the stripper on Pornhub. And you've been dying for his undivided attention because you're the one that's in love with him. You're the one that is wrapping up your emotional well being around him. You're the one that obviously, I would assume that if you actually love someone, that you would want their undivided attention, right? So if he's giving his undivided attention to another woman, would that not make you upset? I know that would make me upset. Especially if I spent all of these years, if I invested all of this time into you, I invested these years into you, getting to know you, trying to be emotionally available to you, and now I still can't even have all of your undivided attention? You're telling me somebody that doesn't even know you exist is going to get your undivided attention with no work and no effort required? So she didn't have to cook for you. Candy the stripper, she didn't have to cook for you. She didn't clean for you. She's getting paid off of you because on Pornhub you get paid per click or whatever if you're one of the people who works there. You're getting paid off of the OnlyFans and stuff. So yeah, I would be pretty pissed if I had centered my whole life around this guy. I'm moving into his house. I don't like his ugly ass decorations. I don't like this masculine ass bedroom that I'm sleeping in. I don't want to sit on this masculine black leather couch with like a recliner and shit. No. I want fuzzy pink furniture. I want everything in my house to be soft. I want flowers everywhere. I want it to look extremely girly and extremely feminine. So you're telling me I have to be in this ugly ass house wiping up your poop and your pee, and then people will say, oh no, he can hire a nanny, he can hire a maid, he can hire this. Who can hire a nanny and a maid and a freaking au pair and a driver? What are you talking about? What men are you guys interacting with? Because according to statistics, 90% of men in the US make less than 167K. So you're telling me that a guy who makes less than 167K, he's going to purchase you a mansion, hire a nanny, hire a maid, hire all these other people, and you're just going to be sitting around sipping margaritas and getting flued out and going on vacations with him every month? That's unrealistic. Most men in America, they're making average American incomes. They're making 50,000, 60,000, 70,000. So whoever you're interacting with, whoever your boyfriend is, sorry babe, but he's probably not that. Not to mention the fact that there are plenty of articles that say that the majority of marriages have both couples paying bills. So that 70K or whatever, that's not going to afford you this lifestyle that you're trying to live. So you're going to be paying for your own vacations. You're going to be paying for 50% of your own vacations. You're paying for 50% of your own dates, 50% of your own birthday present, because all of that stuff is coming out of your joint bank account as a married couple. But that's another reason that I feel like a lot of married women can actually be very lonely. It's because of unrealistic expectations. I think that a lot of women have all of these different needs and standards that they think are going to be met if they just get picked by Scott or they just get picked by XYZ guy. And also, I think that a lot of women can be very codependent on guys to the point where we believe that, like, oh, I don't have to spend as much time with the girls. Like, I'm married now, it's going to be more fun if I do this with Scott because Scott is paying for me. When I go out with my friends, I have to pay for myself, but Scott is paying for me when we go out to a restaurant. So let me just not have a girls' night. Let me just keep going out with Scott because he's the one paying for me, and then I'm good. But then you look up and, a few months later, you have no friends. And so if your marriage ever starts going bad, you have no one to open up to about that. And I feel like for a married woman, especially if you have kids and stuff, it's so easy to start revolving your whole world around just your household. So it's easy to become very closed-minded, to start living life kind of on autopilot mode. This is why we see a lot of women within marriage, they will start gaining all this weight. And it won't be just related to the baby, but they'll start gaining all this weight because, the marriage is stressing them out, or they don't really get out much anymore. They don't really go to the park like they used to. They don't go hiking with their friends like they used to. They don't go walking around the city like how they used to with their college friends and stuff because they associate marriage with like being boring now. They feel like, okay, I'm a wife now, so I need to kind of like be with my husband and invest all this extra time into him. Meanwhile, the average man doesn't even think like that. The average man will ditch you so that he can go hang out with his boys. The average man will ditch his wife so that he can go play pool with some guys and flirt with waitresses at sports bars. And another reason why I feel like a lot of married women can be lonely, and a lot of people don't talk about this. I think that it's because, let's say you're a stay at home wife and mom, and you're being provided for and all that good stuff. So on the surface, it looks like everything's perfect. But if you're a stay at home wife and mom, once you're done doing all the chores and stuff at home, what do you usually do? Usually they will go on social media. Usually they'll go and watch movies or whatever. So I think that as a married woman, when you go onto media and like watching movies and stuff, Hollywood and social media do not promote marriage on average. Like, they don't make the whole movie about a woman who is married and how fabulous her life is. No. They start off movies with the girl is single and she's living her best life and she's being carefree or whatever. I don't think I've seen a lot of movies where it's like, oh, the woman she's been married for 50 years and there's no drama in her marriage whatsoever. And like, she's the main character of the show. And, this is how exciting her life is after marriage. No, most movies that are female centered are about the falling in love process. It's about the honeymoon phase process. It's about being wined and dined. It's about the desirability process. It's not about life after marriage. Notice how most of the movies, like the princess movies and stuff like that, it kind of ends with, okay, and then they got married and then happily ever after. It doesn't tell you what happens after that shit. Disney movies would not hit the same if it's like, oh, hey, this is Cinderella's Prince Charming, and he's still attracted to other princesses though, and he jacks off to those other princesses about 5 times a week, but he married Cinderella. So now, instead of cooking and cleaning for her stepsisters, now Cinderella is cooking and cleaning for the prince. No, that's not usually what we get taught. So I do feel like a lot of mothers and wives have kind of more time on their hands sometimes to like make comparison to other people that they see on social media. Being married doesn't mean that you are not vulnerable to still comparing your lives to others. This is why we see a lot of the bitter married women, and the only thing that they feel they have left of their identity is the fact that they're married. This is why you see a lot of women saying, well, at least I'm married, and like, you're not and nobody wants you or whatever. And that's just a coping mechanism a lot of times, because that woman knows that she can't flex anything else. You're not in shape because maybe you lost your body after you got married and had those kids. You stopped prioritizing working out as much, or you only work out so that you can meet Scott's standards. And he only likes XYZ type of body, even though maybe you don't want that body type, or maybe you don't like that body type. So, and also, where did Scott's body standards come from? Most likely came from Hollywood and porn. So I've literally seen married women shaming porn stars or shaming women who are single and child free and pursuing Hollywood or pursuing being a social media influencer, model, or whatever. They'll shame those women while simultaneously wishing they had the lives of those women. Or they thought that being married would get them closer to that lifestyle. I know that that's what I used to think. I used to think that, like, a man is going to give you the softer life. And that's what I kind of disagree with a lot of the femininity content creators. I don't think that the soft life can only be given to you by a man, because if only a man can give you the soft life, that means that that man has the power to take it away. And that means that without him, you're going to live a hard life. No, most relationships are not even soft. Most marriages and long-term relationships are actually struggle love relationships. So I decided to go online and look up the effects of being married and lonely. It says that some of the effects are increased alcohol and substance abuse problems, increased risk for depression, worsened immune system, poor overall well-being, and greater risk of cardiovascular disease and stroke. No wonder they say that a lot of women who are married, they die sooner. Like, I can see why, because yes, if you have a stressful relationship, or, if your life didn't pan out how you thought it would, or if being married wasn't like all it was cracked up to be, then yes, that is a very disappointing realization. And a lot of people seem to think that if they marry a guy, that suddenly that guy will start giving them more attention than before, more validation than before, more effort than before. But most times it's actually the exact opposite. Like, once he's got you locked in legally, and now it's much harder for you to leave because, and especially if you don't have any money or anything, you can't leave. For a lot of guys, once they have you locked in, they start putting in less effort because they feel like, cool, I already won the prize. Like, I already got you. You're already here. And I honestly feel like a lot of men have this bare minimum mindset where it's like, I married you, didn't I? I'm here, ain't I? I keep coming home every night, don't I? So a lot of guys have kind of this bare minimum mindset and don't actually care about your increased happiness. Like I said earlier, a lot of women who are in these super long-term relationships and long-term marriages and have all these kids and stuff, a lot of those women are actually living with a tolerable level of permanent unhappiness. A lot of times, if a person is married and they don't have a life of their own, they tend to get depressed when they're just going through the day in, day out, boring day to day motions. Like, okay, you go to work, you come home, or you stay at home, you cook and clean all day, and then he comes home and plays video games. And then you just do that for the next 80 years. Well, yeah, that doesn't sound very fun. That doesn't sound as fun as the women who are single and child free, who it's like, okay, we can go out for ice cream today, then we can hit up some bars tomorrow, then we can go salsa dancing the next day, and then we can go to Sarah's house and have a pizza night after that. You can't really do that as much when you are married with children because your responsibilities may be different. And I think that this can lead to a sense of loneliness and isolation for women because going from emotionally depending on women to emotionally depending on a man, that's going to be a horrible transition. I'm just saying. I mean, because on average, like I said, women are more nurturing on average. Women are better at building communities on average. So, for example, I was actually thinking about this today. I was thinking if I were to ever go broke, let's say I couldn't pay for groceries or something and I was like that broke, I genuinely feel like my girlfriends would come together and devise a plan on how they can get me some groceries, and I feel like my friends would personally deliver those groceries to my apartment. That's how much I feel my friends care about me. But if I were to think about how some husbands can treat their wives, I feel like part of it is sometimes men will shame women for our mistakes and they will shame women for like the stupid things we do. And I think part of this is because men are often socialized to feel shame whenever they have a failure. A man is often defined by his successes and failures, whereas women are often defined by things like beauty and, how sexy you are and stuff. So I do feel like a lot of men face a lot of trauma when it comes to being shamed for their mistakes. And so because of this, I've noticed this pattern where a lot of men will see their wives make a certain mistake, and instead of rushing to help her and comfort her and hug her and tell her everything's going to be okay and try to fix the problem, a lot of men will be like, well, why would you do that? Well, why would you spend all of your money on this? Well, why would you not be able to get the groceries? Are you serious? I can't believe that. They start to have that mindset. So yes, if you are a woman and you make financial mistakes and for whatever reason, maybe you can't get the groceries for yourself or, something bad has happened, I do feel like a lot of husbands will shame their wives or kind of like roll their eyes at their wives or not provide as much emotional support as a woman's girlfriends can provide. A lot of women, like let's say you're friends with a bunch of girls and stuff, you could be like, hey guys, I had a really bad day. Like, oh my God, I'm on my period. Like, I'm just in such a crappy mood. Most of the time, your girlfriends will be like, oh girl, like, can we cheer you up? Or like, do you want to talk about it? Do you want to vent about it? Like, ooh, what happened at work? Oh my God, I can't believe that. Ooh, tell me all the tea of what happened at work. Most women are genuinely like interested in helping other women and like kind of talking to them if they're their friends. But for a lot of these women in these marriages and stuff, if you come home and tell your boyfriend or husband or whatever, I had a really bad day, most guys, they're not going to be like, oh, baby, come here, give me a hug. Okay, let me give you a kiss. Do you want me to make you some food? Well, how about I make you some cookies or something to help you to feel better? Most men don't do that because a lot of men stereotype that as being gay. So I do believe that for all of those reasons, this can cause women to actually be lonelier within the marriage and within the family structure than the women who are just, single and they kind of have friends or whatever. Also, another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that once you become married, if you are centering that man, let's say you don't have a bunch of friends and stuff like that, or a life outside of him, you just went from being validated by your friendships, validated by coworkers, validated by random people on the street. You just went from all of those sources of validation to suddenly hoping that just this one man can provide you with all of the validation in the world. So that is an unrealistic expectation. One man, he can't validate how you feel about the new Sephora makeup sale. He doesn't know what that is. He doesn't even care about that. He can't validate how you feel about pumpkin spice lattes versus peppermint mochas if he's not into that. So there are always going to be things that like your husband just isn't into or your husband just doesn't understand. And as a woman, if you don't have plenty of female friendships and like non-male centered outlets to express those sides of yourself, then yes, you are going to eventually feel lonely because you're going to be like, dang it, I can't talk to him about like my favorite curling irons and like, stuff that he doesn't know about. I can't talk to him about which colors I feel look better on my undertone and what kind of smoky eye I want to do today. We can't get ready together and like do our makeup together and have kind of like this girls' night get ready with me thing. We can't do that because he's a guy. So I feel like when women start to break off from their friendships once they get into relationships, that's one of the things that they don't realize is going to end up being a void that they will need to be filled later on. Because just like how guys want to have time with their bros, a lot of girls want to have time with their girls too. And you want to wear a frilly pink outfit and like have a tea party and stuff. So that man literally cannot fulfill all of your emotional needs. He's just a guy and he's just one man. Speaking of fulfilling needs, I think that another thing that can be very jarring and isolating for a wife is once she realizes that no matter what she does, she will never be able to fulfill all of her husband's sexual desires and wants or needs or whatever. That is something that's actually what caused me to decenter men, was realizing that no matter what I do, no matter what I say, no matter how nice I am, no matter how many bills I pay, you're telling me that he's always gonna want to fuck another woman or at least think about fucking other women? Then why the fuck would I put all of this effort in? Why would I like waste all of my time trying to like be as pretty as possible for him, trying to get his attention, trying to always make sure that I say the right thing so I don't bruise his ego and trying to make sure I pump him up and bending over into a pretzel in the bedroom to try to please this guy and it's still not enough? So no matter what I do, it's not enough? I feel like a lot of wives come to this realization and it leads to lots of resentment and lots of anger. And I honestly believe that that's what happened with Jada Pinkett. I think that that's part of why she is the way she is towards Will or whatever. But also, just because you're married doesn't mean that you have intimacy. There's a such thing as physical intimacy, and there's also a such thing as emotional intimacy. Most men are very weak when it comes to emotional intimacy. So imagine giving up your last name. Like you no longer even have the same name. Like you have to get a new ID, new passport, everything, new social security card. You gave up your name. You no longer live in your cute little apartment that you used to live in that was centered around your desires, your exact decorations, exactly how you wanted to have the kitchen arranged. Everything was catered to you. You move to this place with this new guy. You move to his city that he lives in because he has this job. You're asking him for permission. You're asking him to give you an allowance. You have to ask him for his credit card. You have to ask for everything. He gets to question you on, why did you spend money on this purse? Why did you buy that? No, you can only spend $400 today. No, don't spend $500. You can only spend $400 of my money. And bring me back my credit card when you're done. And then I'm going to check the statements on a monthly basis to monitor your spending to make sure that it doesn't encroach upon our financial goals. Even though they're really just his financial goals, he'll be like, these are our financial goals. I'm the head of the household, so this is about my vision. And then a lot of times as a woman, if you want to have a voice in the marriage, you have to pay bills. You have to pay 50% of his bill. You have to be giving him a discount on bills. So a lot of guys, they don't operate based off of things like morality or, being a good person or, emotionally being attached to you and stuff like that. No, a lot of guys operate off of things like consequence. They operate off of things like cause and effect. And that's it. He's not thinking, oh, if I let her spend $500 instead of $400, she's going to feel more happy and more carefree. And that's going to spill over into how good our marriage is. And you know what? I just want to be generous out of the kindness of my heart. No, most guys are thinking, I'm going to let her spend $400 so that she can shut up about asking me to spend money. And I want to do the bare minimum to make sure that she never calls me stingy so that I can get what I want in this marriage. And I also feel like when women are not meeting our goals, oftentimes it's because of a man. You know how a lot of people say behind every successful man is a good woman who like held him down and built him up basically. But I believe that behind every failed woman is actually a man that held her back from her goals, that negged her, that impregnated her and tried to like trap her, baby trap her, marriage trap her, or do all of these different things to lower her self-esteem. And I do feel like when women are married and have kids and stuff, I feel like sometimes that can be kind of a distraction from whatever her own personal goals are. And I do think that a lot of women lose themselves in being wives and mothers. And this is why you see lots of women, once they have been married for 18 years and they become empty nesters, they have no more sense of purpose because they're like, oh shit, my kids are gone. And like, what do I have left? I was using these kids as a distraction from my bad marriage and from my horrible life. So now I have less distractions. So, like, I actually have no excuse now but to kind of look at myself and look at my life and the way it has progressed or not progressed over the course of these 18 years. Another thing that people don't realize is that oftentimes when people get married and have kids and stuff, all of that romance that you used to have when you were first together and stuff, that stuff tends to die over time. And you know who the main one is who tries to bring it back? Usually it's the woman who's the main one. Usually a man will only try to bring back the romance if you take away the sex part. But if the man knows that he can still get sex out of you, even without having to wine and dine you, without having to get you flowers and stuff, then he's good. He's not going to go out of his way because he's like, oh, I'm getting the final thing of what I wanted, which was the sex. And this is why I also believe that it's a very bad idea to leave your friends and family, leave the city that you were in, leave the state or the country that you were in, so you could go chase behind a guy or because you got married or whatever. I think that socially isolating yourself and emotionally isolating yourself from everyone else in your life is one of the most unhealthy things you can do because that's definitely going to lead to you being lonely. Also, can we talk about the fact that most men's effort doesn't match the woman's? Like most women, they are kind of, I feel like women are kind of like, okay, we need to sit down and talk about this. You know, we need to express our emotions and our feelings about this. Do you have any childhood traumas that could have led you to this? Is there anything in your past that happened that could have led you to having these feelings towards me right now? Most men do not even operate like that. They don't put that much effort even into the thought of how to solve this conflict. Most men tend to resort to things like gaslighting or, you know, being defensive and stuff like that, or even emotional manipulation in order to get their way. Anyway, I am convinced that most people who are married are not as happy as they say they are. And most people who are married, if you were to ask them, hey, what's the most common argument you guys have? What was the biggest thing that you guys have overcome in your marriage? Like, what's the worst thing that your husband has ever done to you that you forgave him for? Most married women will never answer those questions because that would ruin their image in your eyes. A lot of married women who are extremely male identified and kind of have nothing going for them outside of the marriage, they would never in their lives tell you the traumas that they've endured in order to keep their marriage because that would make them look too pathetic in your eyes. So anyway, that is my theory on why a lot of women who are married can be lonely. What do you guys think? Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever felt lonely in a relationship? Let me know in the comments section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.